So we will welcome Lorenz Rahmstorf for a presentation. Bronze Age balance, weights and proxy data, result of the WEIGHTANDVALUE project. Donc poids de balance de l'âge du bronze et données proxy, résultat du projet WEIGHTANDVALUE.
Yes, in the weight and value project, we investigated the evidence for weights, scales and weight adjusted or weight regulated artifacts in this whole region from the Atlantic to the Indus, and there were 6 postdocs employed, and I just highlight here Nicola Yalongo, who cannot be here with us unfortunately, but especially will refer also to his research results, which are most important also for this kind of research. Takes a bit. Yeah, sorry. And we have published quite a lot, 30 articles or so, but also monographies, conferences first, but then now also monographies on weights will be coming very soon, this volume on European weights, and I published finally, my apologies, 10 years later, my habilitation in 22, and all together with also Thibault's massive volume. We have now in the last 2 years 4 volumes on weights only, Bronze Age weights. So I have counted 3 for the 100 years before, so it's quite a massive impact now of research, and more volumes are coming. So on silver I'm writing a volume. We have the important the other weights from here, Central Mesopotamia, including early weights of the first half of the 3rd millennium. We are also working on that. So the idea of the project, or the objective, was to investigate the distribution of weights, especially in the 3rd millennium further. I did that in my habilitation thesis, but I already realized that the areas we don't know any evidence, so haven't we found it yet here where all these question marks are, or are there really no weights in use during the Bronze Age? That was maybe the main question of this research. And after the weight and value project, yes, we found more weights in more regions, for example, southern Italy, also in Britain, at least including heavyweights, the so-called Kannelurensteine. We have some also in the north, but only heavyweights. That's still a problem for the Nordic Bronze Age. But some regions, especially the Balkans, there is not yet really any weights identified, which is a problem, at least for me. It's hard to understand. So the question is still, were balances weight not used in some regions, or have they simply not been identified so far? Does the distribution of weights mirror the distribution of other artifacts, commodities, practices, economic strategies? So that's the question beyond the simple evidence and study of weights in chronological, typological and metrological aspects. And do societies which are using weights differ from those without the use of weights? So it's still higher, yeah. So, and that from that you can come to hypothesis. The archaeological presence of certain artifacts I just mentioned, or techniques, practice, hints to the use of weights. For these reasons, we may postulate the use of weights, even if they have not been identified so far. So that's what I mean with proxy data. The question is, can certain archaeological evidence be considered as a proxy data for weight use, like what you're doing in climatic studies, that you have certain different, really very different categories of research results which give indications for, let's say, for example, climate change. And the second hypothesis, the implementation of weighing technology implies the use, knowledge, application of other choices in the economy. is it always including money, for example, what you can call money, societal organization? Is it, so to say, more complex, more advanced or not? And even the mental conceptualization of the world, that's considering mathematics, mathematical concepts, things like commoditization and so on of a given culture. These are points I will dwell on, especially the first question. Yeah, and that's the question. If you look at this, cultures using weight share similar societal and economic characteristics, you may say from the beginning, yeah, we have weights in ancient Egypt and ancient Mesopotamia with states, early states, but they are also present in Central Europe, where surely nobody would speak of states in the Bronze Age. So you already see from the beginning there is a variation. But still, I would like to test especially the first hypothesis with by comparing distribution maps for these questions of economic strategies. That's an example of seal use and specific materials. And then the third case, the fragmentation of metal. If we have a look on the use of seals, and here you see it in a model that, yeah, in the sealing of containers with just these clay over the knots, and then they were stamped here, like for example in Aslan, Tenepe, but not only containers, ceramic containers, but also doorknobs, for example. And the distribution of these finds, not the seals, but the sealings, which really show directly the use of seals in an administrative context, that's really very similar to the one of weights in the third millennium. It's a bit less in Iran, but you have it in all regions where you have also weights. So is it really that you have the one and then you have also the other? Yeah, in the third millennium, yes, but as I just said, for the second millennium in Europe, of course, you know, there is beyond Greece, in the north and west of Greece, you don't have any seal use. So it's not working for the second millennium. But yeah, it seems not only for storage administration, but also for trade. And we have, of course, indications for that. They were using seals. So there is this combination of use, weights and seals in the third millennium BC. Yeah, so, but not Europe. Let's have another case, lapis lazuli. We clearly know, like with Baltic amber, where we have also region, but here it's even more specific. It's only from Sarisang in northeast Afghanistan. And again, the distribution is very similar to the one of the weights. And actually, we have also evidence. Actually, it was never really published so far in detail, but it's described that in the Palace of Ebla, it must be this dot, that they had these chunks of lapis lazuli roughly in amounts of weight units, a minor or 2 minors, so they were cutting them according to weight standards. So yeah, it would be interesting to test that for more sites, but it hasn't been done, as so often material has not been weighed that you can study it. So works quite well for third millennium. It doesn't work at all for bronze, which has been so often emphasized. That is the world of trade and interconnections of the exchange really opens up with the use of bronze, the tin copper alloy during the Bronze Age. But we have clearly tin, bronze already in Europe in various regions here, missing a lot of dots in the southern Balkans before we have any evidence for weight. So there is no clear connection between tin, bronze and weight use. Let's have a look for silver. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I don't have a distribution map just for these regions. I'm collecting data. These are all sites which have silver objects from mainly, of course, graves, but in few cases, and these are the interesting ones, also from settlements and hordes from settlements. And you see here the numbers. Yeah, again, the East Mediterranean, Western Asia, there are a lot of sites with silver objects, but for example, Eastern Europe, also Southeastern Europe, north of Greece, there are quite a lot of silver objects already in the 3rd millennium, but there are nearly all of them quite small objects. And in these regions, again, we don't have weight use already in the 3rd millennium, so it's not working. But we have silver rings, temple rings, or combined with the hair somehow. They are always found next to the heads in the Yamnaya graves from Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe. Here forms Moldavia, especially a concentration. And these light spiral rings, we don't have the weight in most cases. I would like to test that as well. Because, yeah, there is maybe an indication for similar ones from the Caucasus region. In gold, some have been published with a weight, and the sample is extremely small, so you cannot really do anything with it. But it works a bit with weight standards, and the fractions of it we know from this region. So is it just coincidence, or it would be worth to test it on a larger sample for all these silver rings? Because this whole question of silver and rings is an old discussion. You find already quotations here from old Meyers großes Konversationslexikon from the early last century, describing it as ring money in spirals, for example, often and chopped up, served as money from the Bronze Age to the later Iron Age. The pieces were then weighed on scales and was used as a payment. And when I read that, I always ask myself, what was the evidence really they were building these assumptions on? Clearly not tested archaeological data at this age. But we have from the cuneiform record from the ancient Near East clear indications that silver is related especially to chopping, cutting it off, and to weight. For example, already from the word itself, capsum, it's related in the word semantics to kasapum, which is meaning broken, so that you break up silver into pieces, or then we have special terms. Sorry, it's not mine, I hope. I have the same tone. Okay. And that silver is also weight adjusted from text for ilver, and that is often used for transactions, for payments and so on. So it's really clear from the Near Eastern record that it was important. And Nicola Yalongo with others, they tested it on the silver found in hoards, pieces which are also known from the written sources in different kind of pieces, not only rings, but also really lumps and so on. And the upper part of this graph, these are the weights from 6 sites, and you see the main unit, multiples and fractions of it. And here are the silver pieces, and you see they cluster around these unit values, or 10 times the unit. So it's not highly precise, but it's of course it's no coincidence, and shows that these pieces were already cut into amounts which were complying to the weight unit. And in Chicago a few years ago, I could study these objects from the so-called Scafacia silver hoard. It was bought from the antiquities market nearly 100 years ago, but it's likely actually that it's indeed from Carfagia. And there you see all these small spirals, and they often clearly cut off at what end, and there are a few heavy silver spirals, and again these are very close to a major weight unit, or half of it, or and so on. So already Marvel Powell, who studied these pieces in the 70s, he assumed that this is ring money, but it was never really studied in detail or published. So I'd like to do that. And yeah, of course, because it's not from any archaeological context, really, we first have to make clear that it is from the ancient Near East or from the Bronze Age, but you find also parallels, for example, for these rings here in the famous treasure of Ur, so-called treasure of Ur from the Second Palace at Mari in Syria. Here just some artifacts out of it, here placed in the courtyard of this temple. So it is, you say, more in typological indications. I guess it's most likely it's really late dynastic period. When you test it, first you have to test it against the weight record from the 3rd millennium. And these are these weights we could study also in Chicago from Tel Asmar, Kafacha, and Ishali from the 3rd and early 2nd millennium. And here you see again from the different sides, and again it's very clear you have the main unit, fractions of it, and multiples, and this is this unit between 8 and 9 gram, which later becomes more precise at 8.3 gram, but it's already there in the early 3rd millennium with these we would call pebble weights, because they look like really just normal pebbles, but some have these parallel incisions indicating the number of unit which stands behind this this weight. Yeah, and then I checked these 120 pieces from the Kafacha silver hoard, and you get also bit clusters, again around 10 gram or less than 10 gram and multiples of it, but it's clearer if you apply the so-called cosine quantogram analysis, which is searching for peaks in the, for possible mass unit, which is there in multiples, and you get a high peak at less than 9 gram, in between 8 and 9 grams. So again, these pieces from the 3rd millennium from Kafacha are already complying to the weight unit of this time. So Marvin Powell was really right in his understanding of this silver. What is with bronze? And that's again the work of Nicola and also Giancarlo Lago. They have now collected over 30,000 pieces of bronze from hoards in Central Europe and Southern Europe. That's, you see the countries involved: Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and Italy. From the beginning of the Bronze Age, that's phase 1, 2,300 to 1,500, and second phase 1,500 to 1,100, and then the latest Bronze Age 1,100 to 800. And you can also see that its own fragments are really only starting in this middle to late Bronze Age. I would say especially after 1300 BC, when you get all these scrap metal hoards in this region. So you get a lot of these fragments before you have it very sparsely, and that continues also very similar numbers in the latest part of the Bronze Age. And they weighed all these pieces, and there is no any result for the first phase, but in the second phase you have a clear peak around 10 gram again, and this is in the weights. This gray is indicating the weights in the weight sample, but also even higher in the fragment sample, and it's really clear that it's at the same point, so it's statistically significant. Clearly, there cannot be any result of pure chance that we have this peak. So all these small fragments of bronze, they were weighed out, or roughly weighed out, to comply to the weight unit of this time. And this is also still the case in the latest part of the Bronze Age, if not so clear as with the earlier late Bronze Age. And this is, of course, a highly interesting result for Bronze Age studies. As you all know, we have these thousands of scrap metal hoards from Europe. There has not been made any distribution map where they really are found. But if you compare it now again as proxy data to this distribution of weights from the now appearing volume on Bronze Age weights, you see, for example, here these concentrations. For example, also in Portugal, we have just heard, and there you have also, here we have these hoards of fragmented bronze. So there's Carlo. I wonder if you have weighed, or you said you have weighed these pieces. It would be very interesting to test if they again comply to the weight unit also known from Portugal. But still, we have again these areas where we have no weights so far, or very little weights. It has to be tested how many fragmented bronze there is, but it's clearly a lot of fragmented bronze also in the Carpathian Basin and further south on the Balkans, and really no weights, very few weights are found already so far in this region. The same is for the Nordic Bronze Age. So there are still regions which have to be investigated, and it's unclear, but I would say it works quite well for the second millennium that you have fragmented bronze and you have there also this distribution, you find balance weights. So to come to conclusions for this first hypothesis, certain archaeological evidence can be considered as proxy data for weight use. I showed examples, it's working quite well, but often it's not really. Then it's a question, is it just the state of the research that we haven't found identified weight so far? But I would say there are tendencies, and clearly it's a fragmentation of metal, silver, and then bronze, which is so far our best candidate, but also here we have to test the data further. And for the second hypothesis, I have not really dwelt here much on, which is more complex. If cultures using weights share similar societal and economic characteristics, my impression so far is it's more the opposite. Societies using weight technologies show a rather large range of different organizations. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much.